he is, God, he has got so much damn potential.
He definitely does.
He's got so much potential.
But he comes back from every fight that he's had better, you know? I mean, when one of the most impressive ones was he knocked out Klitschko. Oh my God.
Klitschko's seen better days, though.
I now see where Jake Paul is getting his confidence. After watching this, I understand how he built a story in his mind that he really has a chance. But we should remember that Anthony Joshua doesn't have trouble with every smaller fighter. Joe Rogan and Mike Tyson talk about the Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua fight and explain how different the two fighters are. Tyson says Joshua needs to control his punches because Jake is not on his level. Rogan calls Joshua one of the scariest men in boxing and points out how risky it is for Paul to face someone so powerful, especially since Paul has only fought retired or older fighters in exhibitions.
It's one of the craziest propositions of all time. You take a guy who just had a boxing match that looks like a sparring match with a 58-year-old Mike Tyson, and then you're going to fight one of the absolute scariest knockout artists in the heavyweight division. Maybe we should watch the Francis Ngannou fight so you could see. Let's watch that real quick, just so you can see what Anthony Joshua is capable if he's fighting someone that's not in his league. Okay, look, Usyk beat him, and he beat him twice, and Andy Ruiz caught him in the first fight and dropped him and stopped him. It was spectacular. Andy Ruiz is super fucking talented. Usyk is perhaps the greatest heavyweight boxer of all time.
The weight concept host explains that for Jake Paul, being knocked out by one big punch from Anthony Joshua is actually safer than getting hit over and over for 8 rounds. The idea is simple. Taking many hard punches can cause long-term injuries. Even though Joshua is using smaller 10-ounce gloves, a quick knockout, while dramatic, can limit the damage and give Paul a clear end to the fight. The host says this changes how we look at the match and shows how dangerous it really is for Paul, even with exhibition-style rules. In this fight, Joshua must use smaller 10-ounce gloves. This change is meant to make the match more exciting for fans and media while still keeping some control over the power of each punch. But the host says Paul is still in real danger. Joshua's power is well known, and less padding means knockouts are more likely. The gloves may be different, but they don't change the huge gap in strength, skill, and experience between the fighters. Every punch from Joshua can still have serious effects.
There really is only one outcome that can hurt Jake in this scenario, and that's that he gets viciously knocked out. Or he gets beat up really bad for 8 rounds and then viciously knocked out. I saw Nikisa talking on Ariel Helwani's show today about this, about like how it's not necessarily something they're worried about that Jake gets knocked out, because he's not afraid of the one-punch knockout as much as he's afraid of like Jake getting beat up for 8 rounds badly and it, you know, causing some real cognitive damage. And there is science behind the fact that the more repeated head trauma is the more dangerous thing about pro boxing, because those gloves, you can get hit, you get 8 to 10 seconds to stand, and you can repeat it 2-3 times in the same fight, just absorbing punch after punch. So in the totality of Jake getting like knocked out cold, is that the worst thing possible for his health? I mean, who knows, dude? You could have a freaking brain aneurysm when you get hit off one shot from a guy like AJ. Again, knock on wood, you don't want to see any of that happen. If his career ends because AJ hurts him badly, then yes. But if it's a knockout where Jake is able to then continue fighting, people will still watch. It may not be as big as the AJ fight, but he still has an opportunity to make money in boxing. Again, the only way it wouldn't be the case is if Jake got like permanently injured from this fight, which is part of the reason that they take this fight, is because Jake doesn't really have anything to lose here outside of, again, the bodily harm. You know, you fight a guy like Tommy Fury again, which I want to see, I think is more competitive, but doesn't bring the eyes that AJ does. So again, this is the entertainment business, and these Netflix fights are made for a massive audience. But you lose to Tommy Fury again, even by decision, that deflates Jake more than a knockout from Anthony Joshua. A loss to KSI deflates Jake more than a loss to Anthony Joshua. This is a perfect, even if Jake would have gotten just schooled by Gervonta Davis, it would have deflated him more than a knockout, I think. Yeah, it's a lot of risk, a lot of reward, but as far as your marketability, as long as you don't get permanently injured, which is a big if.
Nakisa Bidarian explains why they chose Anthony Joshua to fight Jake Paul. Since the fight is being filmed for Netflix, they needed a matchup that looks powerful and tells a strong story. They had to think about fighter popularity, media attention, and what fans want to see. Anthony Joshua was the perfect choice. He's a famous world champion, which makes the fight easy to promote. His presence raises the excitement and gives the story more weight for viewers and partners. The Netflix filming makes every part of the build-up and the fight feel even bigger.
And, Jake Paul being Jake Paul, he wanted to focus on the biggest, baddest names possible. That included Terrence Crawford. That included Ryan Garcia. That included Tommy Fury. That included Anthony Joshua. And we probably had, 30 or 40 names that we kind of reviewed. And I will say at least 12 or 13 names that agreed to do the fight. Some within the 2-week period, actually. But from a Netflix perspective, they were very keen on Joshua. They were interested on Crawford. They were interested in Ryan Garcia as potential opponents for Jake Paul. They were interested in Tommy Fury at some level as well. And the one that Jake gravitated towards was Anthony Joshua. Once it became clear Ryan couldn't do the fight as well, Ryan was also something that he was interested in doing. And the deal came together mostly because Jake mentioned this as of March of this year, right? That's the first time he was on a podcast and said, I think I can beat Anthony Joshua. Everyone laughed. At the time, Eddie Hearn said this is another, media attention-seeking moment for Jake Paul. I made it clear then to Eddie and to the media, Jake was serious and we wanted to do it in 2026. We had further conversations with Matchroom in July of this year with the understanding that if Jake got through Tank Davis, and even though that was an exhibition, it was very much structured to be a real fight in every way, shape, and form, then we would look to make Jake versus Joshua in 2026. So that gave us a head start in terms of trying to come to an agreement with Matchroom and AJ, and we were able to get it done.
I just want to ask about a couple of those names that you mentioned. Garcia's interesting because a day or so later, Oscar De La Hoya said, he's a DAZN fighter, this ain't happening. And of course, we know there's no bigger DAZN name than Anthony Joshua.
Ryan Garcia talks about how much Jake Paul's life could change if he loses. He says Joshua's power is no joke, and a loss could hurt Paul not just physically, but also his reputation and career. This fight could be a big turning point because the challenge is so huge. Garcia explains that Joshua's strength and skill make this a very serious test, and the consequences are real. Paul must train hard, stay focused, and be fully aware of the danger Joshua brings into the ring.
My honest opinion, I think that this has been a misstep from Jake. I think he wanted to make his partners at Netflix a little too happy, and he's gonna walk into it. But look it, he loses to AJ. Where does he go from here? Who does he fight? You're gonna go back down to 135?
The problem is not that he loses to AJ. The problem is the way he's gonna lose to AJ might be life changing.
Right.
So that's the real issue.
It could be life changing in many ways, right? Physically.
Yeah.
See what he did in Nagano. It's like, but then again, if he gets knocked out, he gets knocked out. Nobody really expects anything.
Frank Martin says that even though the fight offers a lot of money, it's still a very hard challenge for Jake Paul. Money doesn't make the risk go away, and Paul should have thought carefully before agreeing. Martin points out that this isn't just about money. The fight is real and the physical challenge is huge. Paul is up against a strong, experienced boxer, and no fame or promotion can match Joshua's skill. The money is big, but the risks to Paul's body and reputation are serious.
I consider Jake now, I wouldn't consider him like a YouTube fighter no more. I feel like he put in the time. He gotten better throughout all his fights. He done got better throughout all those fights, But it's still when you fighting fighters who actually done it for their whole life, it's a little different. If that fight happened, it'll be a good money fight. It'll be a good money fight. But that's a tough task for, Jake going to get that big ass heavyweight AJ. I know AJ personally, so that's a tough task, and that motherfucker could punch.
Johnny Nelson says this fight could end Jake Paul's active boxing career if he gets knocked out. Paul has made a lot of money for top fighters like Joshua by offering big payments for fights. Nelson mentions that some people think Paul might not get similar big fights after this one because of the physical risks and how the public sees him. This match is very important for Paul's future, as it's both a money chance and a personal risk that could change his career.
But we'll see. For AJ, I'm stuck in between because nobody on this green earth would actually turn down 50, 60 million. to fight Jake Paul. And people that don't like this will probably watch it because they want to see Jake Paul getting knocked out. So what does it say about AJ and what does it say about Jake Paul? I think I was thinking upside down. For AJ, I thought, Mama's cashing out. He's cashing out because he's going down this mimic line. But I thought, in reality, is he? Realistically, he's thinking, you know what? This big mouth YouTuber stroke boxer has the cheek to call me out. I'd be pissed off at that, if I'm honest with you. I'd be upset if I was AJ, thinking, that's disrespect, man. You think you can deal with me? But he didn't. AJ was jovial and he commended Jake Paul's business acumen, saying, we've sat down, the deal's been done. But still, it just leaves an odd taste in your mouth. So as long as AJ gets the job done, and I mean gets the job done, shows his world-class pedigree, and wipes this boy out, then everybody's happy. But how does it enhance his career? The only way it enhances his career is financially. That's it. No other way. There's no props from beating Jake Paul, apart from saying, thank God you shut him up. For Jake Paul now, I got to give this boy props because he now has our attention and the whole world is talking about Jake Paul. I want to say a big thanks to our sponsors, Bet Goodwin, for supporting That Boxing Show. Now, if you're interested in having a little flutter, or as I call it after my dad, Benji's Bets, Bet Goodwin's the place to be. Check out Bet Goodwin using the QR code on the screen. I'm probably all right. I'm probably 90% thinking the fight's going to happen. But I'm struggling. I'm thinking, this boy can't be so stupid. But then you hear a whisper. You hear a whisper that Jake Paul himself might be cashing out. Because the big purses that he's pulling, fighting these has-beens or ex-fighters, they're dropping slowly but surely. So maybe, just maybe, this might be his last fight. Getting in there with Anthony Joshua and getting knocked out. But there's always that conspiracy theory. Are there some contract agreements that can and cannot be done, which will never see the light of day that we don't know about? Well, if you're an ex-fighter and if you like the fight game, you'll see fake. You'll know fake when you see it. So if there's any of that fakery going on with this, pulling a shot, taking it easy, giving man a bit of a breather, especially coming from AJ, I'd be disappointed because AJ's brand alone, he doesn't need Jake Paul.
Anthony Joshua spoke about Francis Ngannou deciding not to fight Jake Paul. He said it was a bad choice because boxers don't often get such big opportunities, and saying no might not be smart. Tyson agreed, saying Ngannou should have taken the fight. There was little risk and it was a chance to earn money and get noticed. Joshua's comments show how important it is for boxers to think carefully and take rare chances in their careers.
Francis Ngannou does not take the fight against Jake Paul. Anthony Joshua takes the fight against Jake Paul. Anthony Joshua at the press conference gets asked his opinion of Francis not taking the fight against Jake Paul. And Joshua's like, he's an idiot. He's an idiot. There is no reason for him to not take this match. I cannot be and am not mad at Francis. I can't be. Like rules would preclude me from being upset with Francis. I'm not a big Francis fan. Francis fan. I'm not a Francis supporter. So I want to hurt Francis. I want to do something to hurt him. Well, his own actions took $10 million out of his bank account, of which, by the way, could use $10 million. So I can't be mad at him. If I teased him, and by God, get in there and he go, oh my gosh, I heard Chael and I heard from all the Eagles and what was I thinking? And Joshua's out and this is my chance of redemption. Hey, put me in, Jake. That would then help him. That would be positive for Francis. That would create envy as well as jealousy from outside observers like me. But I will tell you, trying to break down and understand how we got to this conclusion is mind-boggling. You ever met a writer? Your whole life, have you ever met a writer? Maybe went to college for it and they're a writer. Do you want to know the hardest thing in the world that person's going to have to do to make money? Find somebody to pay them to write.
Jake Paul says Anthony Joshua has trouble against smaller fighters, hinting this could help him in the fight. Analysts, like Henry from a podcast, have looked at Joshua's past fights with smaller opponents and noticed patterns. While Paul sees a weakness, experts say Joshua's skill, power, and reach usually make up for size differences. The talk shows the debate about how size matters in fights, but Joshua's experience and preparation still make him a very tough opponent.
I'm going to tell you why Anthony Joshua definitely doesn't struggle, and that's against guys who are of a similar stature to him. When he won his first world title against Charles Martin, he was a taller heavyweight. Not taller than AJ necessarily, but a heavyweight of taller stature, and he got that one with a very simple knockout. It was one of the easiest fights of Anthony Joshua's career. He had a war against Vladimir Klitschko, but again, he was highly competitive and eventually managed to get Klitschko out of there. In the Kubrat Pulev fight, while it was a mixed performance, he did end up producing one of his best knockouts. Similarly against Robert Helenius, whilst AJ probably didn't put in one of his best performances again, it ended in another dramatic knockout. He was punch perfect against Otto Wallin, in my opinion, and he had that absolutely devastating knockout win against Francis Ngannou, who, of course, an absolutely enormous man with a fantastic chin, or so it seemed until Anthony Joshua got his hands on him. Even earlier on in his career against the likes of White, Brazil, and Molina, these were all taller heavyweights who AJ dealt with consummate ease. Of course, most recently, he had that loss against Daniel Dubois. So the reason I mention all of these is to say that AJ doesn't struggle against every shorter man. Therefore, if Jake does okay in some capacity, as I say, loses on points or manages to go several rounds of Anthony Joshua, then you have to say that Jake Paul's quite a bit better than we thought. And Anthony Joshua, yeah, he's slipped since then a bit. I mean, AJ physically was better back then, but he's way more experienced now, so he's maybe around the same overall. It probably all evens out. But the point is, you'd have to give Jake Paul some credit in that situation and really worry about where Anthony Joshua is at this point. Overall, while some of the things that Jake Paul's saying might be true, it still doesn't mean that he has any hope in hell of winning this fight. I still fully expect Anthony Joshua to deal with him within a couple of rounds. Now look, to most people, it'll be a loss to Anthony Joshua if he doesn't even finish him in round one. But the reality is, I understand in boxing that someone can move and can survive for periods of time. It might be that Jake Paul runs. If he does that, then yeah, I could see how he could maybe get to round 2 or 3.
This fight grabs attention because it's one of the biggest mismatches in recent boxing. Paul has youth on his side, but that can't make up for Joshua's skill, strategy, and ring experience. People say the fight will be exciting to watch, but Joshua is far stronger, better prepared, and more skilled. Jake Paul built his career through social media, exhibitions, and big fights, and this match is another step for money and exposure. Experts say chances like this are rare. While Paul brings fame and personality, he's up against a much more experienced and technically better boxer. This fight shows the gap between popularity and real boxing skill.
Just makes you think, why the f would he do this? And the only rational idea I can think of for why he's taking this fight is the fact that, from what I could find, it seems he's getting paid around $92 million by Netflix for this fight. And I'm sure all of you that are watching have all had that conversation with your friends where you ask dumb shit like, how many millions to box Anthony Joshua? I mean, yeah, I'd gladly take brain damage for $92 million. I'd do it for like $20K. And I don't think Netflix are going to be happy with replacing Gervonta Davis with a Nate Diaz rematch, as much as Nate Diaz may love that.
Who do you want to fight next?
Nuggets.
Who do I want to fight next? I want to beat the fuck out of Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua, either one.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, you may think Nate Diaz is being delusional here, but, I mean, I'd take brain damage twice in one night for that kind of money. And as crazy as it seems that Jake Paul's actually going to be boxing Anthony Joshua, it doesn't seem as crazy as...
That's all for today's video. Stay tuned and see you next time.